Hey everyone, I am Jim Gast, and this is the Reboot, and I'd like to welcome you to the show. Today we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 and some of its little-known security features, the things that people just don't know about. And on top of that, a lot of people really aren't focused on the security features in Microsoft 365. They're really using it. So for many of you in the audience today, this might even just be an absolute eye-opener. But before we get to that real quick, I'd like to introduce my partners in crime here. Guys, go around the world and mention your name and where we're from.
Hey, I'm Dave Root with Winstar Technologies in Culpeper, Virginia.
Brian Heisler from Computeries St. Louis.
Brandon Bowers from Zentech Data Systems, South Florida.
David Luft, LDD Consulting, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Brian Bracci, B&L PC Solutions, Long Island, New York.
Brian, you're not in Long Island.
Really,
right
you're in California. Don't lie.
Just we hit the month mark yesterday in being on a job in California, so I'm ready to go home.
There you go. I bet you are. Well, listen, thanks for joining the Reboot. And real quick, all of us here are business owners. We're all IT, MSP, or MS. Are you guys any of you guys MSSPs? Just out of curiosity, you call yourself that? So we're all MSPs, managed service providers. We're all technology and security experts. And one of the things we're here to talk about, and the reason we're going to talk about it is because a lot of businesses are not looking at technology, accounting, marketing, so on and so forth, the things in their business because they're too busy working in their business. So the Reboot is about stepping back, taking a look at it from a higher level and considering what you may or may not want to do in your business. So today, little Microsoft 365 little known security features. Guys, if you don't mind, I'd like to kick it off.
Please.
Is anybody mind? So I wrote down a few things here, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes or stealing anybody's thunder.
He's going for the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit, Brandon.
Oh, wow. Oh, by the way, three of us here are either experts or at least really familiar with Microsoft 365 security features, and three of us are not. We'll let you guess which ones. No, in all seriousness, though, the guys that are not, and that Ryan, Brian, and David Luft, right? You guys
man, call them out.
Right,
Yeah.
you guys ask. Oh, man, Brian, I don't
that bus just ran right over my spine.
We talked to them in advance. They're going to ask a lot of questions, right? You know, and those questions are going to help you determine what you should be looking at, what you shouldn't look at. So guys, we're really leaning on you to push us hard on some of these things. Okay. So that wasn't meant to call you out. That was meant to allow you guys to push us harder. So make sure you stump David Groot. Okay.
Yeah, I like that idea.
That should have been the title of today's. Yeah. Stump Groot.
Stump Groot. That's actually a challenge, really. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is DLP, data loss prevention. Did anybody else have that?
That's the very first thing on my list there.
Oh, wow. You know what? That's what I get from being moderator.
That's right.
Sorry, dude.
It's okay.
That one away.
I got a long list.
Well, you know what? Add to it, though. So we're going to share this one. Data loss prevention. The acronym for that is DLP. And so you know what? Go, Dave. It was on your list. You go ahead and take it. I've talked long enough.
Well, I mean, look, it's a tool that allows you to kind of control the flow of your data outside of your organization. It can do things like protect data that might contain sensitive information from ever leaving the organization or being emailed out. But it's also any other thing you dictate as making data sensitive and therefore something you want to keep control over. Now there's an add-on feature or a little brother to the DLP, and that's the information rights management module, which allows you to classify your data and then apply policies and rules to it based on those classifications. This is more about, hey, I saw a social security number or what looks like one in an email message. And so I'm going to either encrypt it automatically before it goes out the door and then let it continue, or the policy is going to say, nope, this is not allowed to go out because it's got information that's just potentially, a breach or a loss of private, personally identifiable information. And that the beautiful thing is it used to be just Exchange and email. Now it carries over to OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, which is the programs that most everybody's using.
You got it. You got it.
I want to also add to that, just because there's some really cool use cases to where if you have some incredibly sensitive information and that data gets tagged in a way where only certain groups of people can have it, even if it gets shared out to somebody else within the organization, outside of the organization, copied to a flash drive, whatever the case is, that person's not going to be able to read or access the information. And you can automate watermarks, all kinds of different things to further restrict or protect the data.
Right.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things I've never looked at before, maybe you guys have the answer. So this is a stump Groot time. Inbound. So if someone inbounds an email that has a credit card number or some other type of PII in it or something like that, so a security number, can it flag inbound too? I've never really checked that out before.
Yep, you can flag it. You can use either an exchange mail flow rule, or you can go into the Defender ATP and develop a policy to watch for that stuff. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that data loss prevention, it's kind of funny. It's even as a business owner, right? We have it turned on in our company, and there's no exclusion to the policy in our company, right? So even it applies to me. I tried to send our tax returns to a new CPA.
That's
Boom,
right.
stopped it right away, and I'm like, oh man! And of course, I had to set it encrypted. We don't let ours go out. We stop it because I'd rather have that stopgap measure in place instead of an accidental send. Right.
Exactly.
And then have that person either rethink what they're doing, maybe get an alert to an administrator, which is a great way for DLP to work. Brandon, you touched on
just a question along that, because we set that up internally as well. And I believe, and David or Brandon, you can back me up on this if it's true. You can set it up in almost like a test mode where it will send an alert to the defined administrator, but also send that email out, right? So you can, so you're not losing anything, but also aware that if you did send it, it will go out. But in the future, if you want to prevent this, this is the type of message you'll prevent, right?
What's also nice is you can even have it where it gives your users banners. So like you're sending out an email, and when it detects that information in the email, you get a banner at the top of the email that says there's protected information, or you can customize the text. So that's one good thing. The other thing I just want to make mention of, depending on subscriptions and without getting into the weeds, sometimes rights management is an add-on cost, but in most cases, encryption is not. So, if you want to protect credit card information, tax return, PII, if you're a healthcare provider and you want to protect patient information, those are things that, your IT guy should be able to facilitate the setup, and it would cost the business nothing.
You're right, but the IRM aspect on top of that then says, I'm going to send this to you encrypted, but you're not allowed to download the file. You can't print the file. You can't forward the file. You can't do anything but look at it.
You get more control.
Or whatever it is that you want to happen to that particular data.
One of the awesome things I like about IRM is you can see the geo setting of it too. So where it was actually accessed, which is really nice if you've been hacked, right? And you have IRM on your documents, you can see where they're at in the world. It's a nice indicator of what's happened, even after you have sent something to somebody else outside of the organization. You can see if you allowed forwarding, right? Where they forwarded it to.
So yeah, and Brian, to answer your question, or at least elaborate a little bit further on it, there is a few default DLP rules depending on your SKUs that are put in play now. Microsoft is very much heading in the direction of taking a much more secure stance. Things like SolarWinds and all the things that have been happening in the news in the last year has forced them. They now, for instance, there is now outbound spam rules enabled by default that stop forwarding to external email addresses from your email domain. So if an email comes in to me, I can't have my email in Outlook set up to forward to my Gmail account. It won't do it. The outbound spam blocks that by default. DLP for data loss prevention is looking for credit cards by default at the very minimum. So you can set things up to allow flow out and still just notify the administrator, but you might need to make some modifications or overrides on the default settings to get that for everything.
Yeah, I didn't even realize we had something come in from a vendor that I had just forwarded to a client, and it's just for wire information. So I got the email in, and then I forwarded it for payment, and then it got blocked, and I'm like, so
it had a routing number, right? It had a banking routing.
Exactly. Yeah. It was in an attachment, so that's it's
It's
Doesn't matter
reading the
where it is.
PDF. It's reading
Yep.
I mean, it's a pretty nice engine.
What about encrypted attachments? Does it get into those?
That's what Brandon was alluding to earlier, but that's not a DLP function.
Right.
I mean, DLP can encrypt. You can say if this matches, then send it as an encrypted email, but that's not a function of the DLP. That's a result. That's a task that's being assigned. That's an exchange online protection kind of thing. That the encryption is built in. All Microsoft 365 accounts have that now available to them.
So let's
Used to be you had to buy the higher end ones for that, but not anymore.
So guys, let's move to the next one. You know what, Brandon, me and Dave Groot shared the first one. You want to go ahead and take one?
Well, so I'll kind of tie off of what you were mentioning in terms of location for a second. So you mentioned, hey, if you have rights management, you can restrict where they're accessing, or at least have some type of log of information of where they were accessing. So to take that a little bit of a step further, let's say you don't even use rights management, but you just want to prevent accessing services to your office, to your VPN, to your continent. You only do business in the United States. Somebody in Asia, Russia, some other country shouldn't be logging into your tenant for whatever reason. So a lot of subscriptions are now including conditional access. Conditional access will allow you to be very granular to prevent or restrict or require additional protections. So let's just say you could say, hey, I only want to allow logging in from the US. That could be one thing, very simple. Or you could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to allow outside the US, but when that happens, I'm going to require an additional MFA prompt, or I may require limited access. So you can only get web access, but not download files. Multi-factors. So like a text message or something.
We know what it is.
Oh, no, fair. That's too, Brandon. No, I'm just kidding.
But what one thing that we do is, so for example, like guest accounts, or when we're sharing stuff out, we really restrict the access to like the web portal. So somebody could log in, but they can't download or sync data or do different things because we want to further protect data. So conditional access for us is like an amazing feature. The other way that we use that is we tie in like the entire ecosystem of Microsoft. So we'll have devices on like the Microsoft MDM, mobile device management. And what that'll do is that'll give us more insight. So it'll say, hey, now, yes, is the device in the US? Great, but let's have another check. Well, is the device compliant? And what does compliance mean? You can set those settings. So does it have antivirus? Is it up to date? Has it checked in recently? And as long as those things are happening, is it jailbroken? Exactly. And as long as it's, compliant to that degree, now, okay, we're going to grant access. And if not, then it just isolates it off until it becomes compliant. And then you can't access the company resources until that time. Then you can even set periods where maybe the data gets purged. So we've all had issues where, well, I won't say we have, but we've had clients that have had a laptop stolen or something. There was data on it. Maybe BitLocker encryption was on it. Maybe it wasn't. But now you have another means of protecting that data and wiping that data or making sure it's not accessible.
Yeah. I actually had that as my third one, actually. And so conditional access is rocking. And it's actually in business premium, which is nice, which is the $20 SKU. I don't think it's in standard, guys. It's got to be business premium.
So there is a caveat to that.
Yeah.
Conditional access is based on Azure AD. It's not. So if there's no Azure AD in play, which on the standard is the apps only, there would not be an Azure AD in play.
Well, they changed the nomenclature. So standard is now the 1250 one. Yeah. And what Microsoft gives you free under that one now is what they call security defaults. So you don't get the full control over your conditional access, but they will like force some recommended protections, which you could disable, but it'll say like if it detects, odd activity, they'll call it, which there's different ways that they determine, I think based on location, if they see like frequent logins from one continent to another or other things like that, it'll reprompt a multi-factor authentication prompt or different. Do you remember what else they do?
I mean, it's setting up, where they're required to put a second contact method so that they can, you're heading in the direction of password reset, self-service, and passwordless access, right? So you're going to set up either an authenticator app, or you're going to set up text or voice or any of those kinds of things as a second authentication, or multi-factor, right? That's another one of the baselines that comes into play. And the beautiful part is like you say, the defaults for somebody who's a small company, that's a kind of a pre-applied standard template, right? Those things are, it used to be we had to turn them on when they first were rolling them out, but any new tenants that are generated going forward are going to have that applied to them. So.
Yeah. We've rolled some recent ones out. It was just on by default. You actually would have to go in there and turn it off.
Right.
One of the things, I don't know if you mentioned this, maybe you did and I missed it, but conditional access work can be applied to groups of users or particular users, right? Or or a role. So if you are a salesperson in a sales group, right, and you travel internationally, you can have a different set of conditional access rules for you and your group, if you will, than people are tied behind a desk, right?
Right.
So and what's nice about conditional access, somebody's trying to hack you from around the world, you're gonna know they're gonna be stopped almost. Well, I don't want to say every time, but it's a high probability of them being stopped just because those rules exist.
We get alerts all the time.
Is there an easy way that Microsoft can give you a snapshot of your conditional access, like an overview, and the same thing with the DLP,
like logs?
I'm looking at GUI, and I think it's the DLP is so, and conditional access, they're so deep that you can kind of get, at least me, because we don't, we're starting to roll it out more and more now. It just seems very easy to get lost or not have something in place that you should. But you know how when they had to Exchange Connect the analyzer where it would tell you what you were missing. Is there anything on that side or no?
I just put a link in the chat that'll go on all the social media, well, most of the social media platforms. It's one of the Microsoft documents. They got a great document library now. It's better than ever before. Okay. So that's one of the ones that I like to go to, and it links to all the other stuff, some of the things we're talking about. Okay. Dave, Brandon.
So you're looking at your security score would be one thing.
Yeah.
And then the compliance center, depending on what your licensing is another huge thing that we'll go through, and it'll actually, I just spun up a new tenant this morning, and it immediately started doing a assessment of that tenant in the compliance manager. And by the way, this was business premium. And it's looking through like 1,600 different series, and it's comparing it to the NIST cybersecurity framework, so that it can tell you, it's all dealing with your Microsoft infrastructure, and then there's even things outside of it that it'll have you where you can walk through self-assessing and improve your security score and your compliance score by taking their steps to action, even including physical security to your building and all the different aspects of that. So you certainly can go in there and get snapshots of those things.
The other nice thing about that scoring system is on a lot of the items, the remediation is automated. You just have to click a button and it does it for you.
If it's related to the Microsoft 365 platform, it is literally button easy.
I'm going to put a stop sign on that one, guys. I'm going to put a stop sign on that one because, it is implementation easy, but implication heavy in a lot of
That's right. You got to know what it's going to change and how it's impacting your users. Just because fixing it takes, you can satisfy the little score system, right? Where it says, if you do this, you get 27 extra points, and you say, okay, do it. And boy, you got those points. And then you got 27 support tickets to go along with it, because now nobody can get into anything.
What Ryan was asking, though, that's a nice outline of it, but it sounded like he wanted to have a quick overview of what are all the conditional access rules, what groups do they apply to, and can you do that for permissions on shares in OneDrive also, or Sharepoint, where you can just get a report that says these folders have access to these people. Because every once in a while we run across customers where somebody's put an everyone group on a folder, and it's nice to be able to get those reports out that you could just review it and identify it quickly.
So there's some trick answers to that question. Go ahead, Jim. You had something.
No, you please. I like the trick. So let's go.
So I know they're heading in a slightly different direction, but to be able to have that level of insight with 100% assurance, you're going to need an E5 type SKU. But there are reports that will allow you to go look at your guest users in the lower subscriptions. Basically, what you're talking about are SharePoint libraries in most cases, right, where people are sharing a file out with an external user. It happened 3 years ago. There was no expiration on it, and so now it's just still sitting there being shared with people, and you don't even know who's got access to your resources. And so there's limited exposure in the lower SKUs, but if you really want granular control, you're going to need to get into E5. And I'll just leave it at that because we can get into the weeds all day about the details.
I want to comment on that too, though.
Just reporting on it, so you could just review it. I don't know.
Yeah, let me comment on that for a second.
Sure.
So, static report permissions with SharePoint, OneDrive, that's built into the box. No matter what subscription you're on,
Right.
if you need any of that, that's readily available. Now, I think what Dave is alluding to is there are some on the higher tier subscriptions, which I think you don't even need to go to E5. I don't want to get into the weeds, but there are some just add-on licenses.
Well,
and
right, you can do
what they
right.
call it is, I think it's called security review, and you can schedule these reviews where certain people get assigned a review, and it'll show what they've shared. Do they still approve that access? And they actually have to go in there manually and like say, yes, this is still valid. Yes, this is still valid, or else revoke access. And that does facilitate certain compliance conditions to where you're supposed to be doing that ongoing review, and you need documented proof that you were doing it. So that's one thing. Now, on the other thing you were mentioning, Dave, which is conditional access reporting, I think there's two ways you can potentially do it. So from a logging perspective, there is a way to see things that have hit conditional access policies, which doesn't really give you like a configuration summary, unfortunately. And then in the configuration section of conditional access policies, you can kind of view, but I don't think there's like a very pretty report that would tell you, these are your policies, this is exactly what controls. Like, you actually need to dig into them and review them, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware of.
I would agree with everything you're saying there. I know that it is their goal to work more in that direction. Like, look, with everything else, these companies and their cloud infrastructure first was very suitable for enterprise. You know, it wasn't a small businessman's world. Now it is really more geared and designed and being implemented and sold to that marketplace. And so they're finding that those folks don't have the resources in the IT departments and the different things they need for their compliance, their security managers and all that. So they're moving in that direction. They're also moving in a direction of single pane of glass. There's a new thing coming out from Microsoft called Lighthouse, which is allowing folks like us to be able to put all of our clients' tenants into one dashboard where we can now start to configure those policies and those processes and the security settings on a consistent level and apply them as templates and watch and see what's going on. It's very new. It's still beta. It's not polished, and it's got a long ways to go, but it is heading in that direction.
I just want to comment again as more as an outsider here that I would think that it would be much easier if Microsoft turned on DLP, and you can't send credit card info, you can't send bank info, you can't send routing numbers, turn that, block it, let me work to unblock it. Like, it just seems like I'm doing more work to try to lock it down.
But they are now.
That is what they're doing.
That is the default DLP policy. That's what I was mentioning to you earlier is, yes, you can set things up to go ahead and send anyway, and then just give the administrator a notification. But today you're going to have to go back in and undo things because by default, it's not going to let that happen.
And on top of that, that's why they're enabling security defaults by default now. There's something else they started a little while ago. They actually did this. Yeah. And retroactive, what they did to all tenants months ago was they disabled outbound forwarding, which you had to manually go in there and enable it if you needed to set exceptions.
That's that outbound spam filter. That's where that's being disabled. And that was not put in place by default in the beginning. And they did, that caused us a lot of noise.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to have a Microsoft partner that's got their ear to the wire all the time with Microsoft to know this stuff. I got a daily email that I'm reading every single day at this point to make sure that our team's abreast of the most important stuff, right? And it's always, hey, wow, they're doing this on next week because I didn't catch it 2 months ago. They're really taking a.
It's hard to keep up with the changes that Microsoft is making because all of their development efforts are going into their
Full
cloud
steam.
service platforms now.
Yeah.
Yeah, full
I
steam.
mean, Teams has, in the last year, Teams has become an entirely different platform than what it was a year ago. I mean, it's just ridiculous the amount of research and development they put into that platform. They make Zoom look like clowns. I mean, it's just a joke. I'm saying it loud and clear. Come get me. I just gotta, we're running out of time here. So can I just throw like 6 things out there so that at least the terms are out there and people can be thinking about them? You know,
just rapid fire, baby.
When it comes to like the world of end users and the Azure Active Directory and the Microsoft 365 platform and the fact that we have remote workforce and we don't necessarily need servers anymore, we need to be thinking about things. And Microsoft has been pushing this initiative for a long time, but it's the passwordless login, no passwords, using things like Windows Hello or the Authenticator app or a security FIDO key or one-time passcode. Those are all things that are built straight in, baked in. I mean, all those things can be developed. You can have in our office and in our clients' offices, we set up when they open up their Edge browser, it goes to their apps page. Those apps are all the tiles for our single sign-on apps that are tied into the Microsoft infrastructure. So when I want to log into my RMM tool or my ticketing system, I literally click a button from that page and it logs me in on the back end. I don't have usernames, passwords. I don't even know what those usernames and passwords are anymore. I know one username, a Microsoft username. Cloud security app. That's something that monitors the use in your environment and can show you shadow IT. You got people using Dropbox and it's against your company policy. There's where you want to go look. You want to see, are they listening to Pandora radio or are they doing Pastebin? What is it that's going on? It's right in there. And then you can set up rules right in there. Click the button, stop this. It doesn't happen anymore. Have a nice day. Yep. I've already talked about the compliance manager, application guard for Microsoft Office. It's huge because it keeps Microsoft files from being able to access company resources. It opens them in a sandbox. If there's malicious code embedded in those particular files, it can't hit your shares, it can't hit your documents, it can't touch any of that stuff. You got Endpoint Configuration Manager for handling your mobile devices, controlling who can access your data, your company assets from what mobile devices. Like Brandon said earlier, are they compliant? Are they not compliant? Are they up to date? Are they even in my office? Because if they're not, they can't be accessing anything anyway. Whatever it is you want to be having done, you take care of that. And then the only other thing is the Microsoft Security Score. I would recommend that you just look into that.
So the secure score is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's just a score of your posture in Microsoft. They're constantly showing you, compared to other people, and they give you ideas and things you can do to improve it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. So you know what? One of the things I realized on Secure Score and the Security Compliance Center, a lot of people don't even know what those are, right? And so if you're an administrator in Microsoft 365, everybody's got the waffle online in their Microsoft 365. It's, if you log into the website, it's top left. You click on that. And if you're an administrator, you have admin tools, right? And so the Security Compliance Center is actually one of those admin tools in there. And you go into it, it goes into a whole new site, if you will, okay, that's related to your site. And that's where you administer that, where Secure Score is at, where DLP is at, Conditional Access is at. That's just one of the interfaces.
And you know what, Jim? The other thing is they have made it much easier for anybody to go into the security or compliance manager and get some insight.
Wow.
I didn't know. So your end users can go into the admin portal if you give them permission to. They just aren't admin. What'd you do? Did you kick him out of there? Did you kick Brandon out?
No, he's back in. I'm popping him in right now.
David Groot used application compliance.
Yeah. There we go. Ahead,
that'll
Brandon.
teach you.
Conditional access. I just got kicked out.
Sorry, that did not meet the policy, Brandon. Those words you were saying did not meet our reboot policy.
That's right.
You were conditionally booted out. No, guys, great topic. We're left with a minute, right? Any final questions, guys? No. That's good. Then everybody knows everything they need to know. You know what you could do, Groot? We'd love it if you have a couple of links right there. And Brandon, you too. I put one up to a couple of resources for people. Put them on the LinkedIn, the YouTube, and Facebook if you so desire, and so people can see them. And while you're watching this video, all these things will be in here. And so we're back again 2 weeks from today, same bat time, same bat channels. Guys, does anybody? I can't remember a topic, but it'll be a good one.
What for the next?
What
the
is
next
it?
meeting?
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a minute. Hold on one second.
Yeah. Bad. Great call, guys. I love this.
It's actually,
look at
it's
the man himself, guys.
I think the next one is edge of the seat entertainment, just like this one. It's risk compliance as every business needs.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. I was waiting for somebody to come over there. Bob
My
Mitchell, thanks a lot,
goodness.
brother, for tuning in. We appreciate you, brother. Yeah, and hey, Bob Mitchell's quite busy himself on these platforms too. So, guys, thanks a lot. Great topic. Sit tight. We'll end the show right now, and we'll chat after. Thanks a lot, everyone.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Have fun.